Hello and welcome to my channel. I am going to be talking about something that's very important to me today, and that is being in alignment with your higher self and higher purpose. Lately, I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been watching a lot of really wonderful teachers talk about how to get into more alignment, and I look at everything through the lens of the creative writing that I do. Now, if you don't know me, I write adult dark romance under Stella Jade, and I also write other books under another pen name. But for these purposes, I'm focusing on the dark romance and on being an author of fantasy, which is a very highly creative art. And I think it's interesting that we forget as authors, especially as indie authors, who I have a great metaphor for this, but are uninterrupted artists with their work. It's really amazing what people can produce from that space of creativity, which I call the higher conscious realm that we connect to when we're writing. If you are somebody who has studied higher consciousness, then you know about that realm. And if you're somebody who hasn't, you just know that you tap into it when you're writing. You feel it. It's a place that you feel. It's almost like when you're there, you forget everything else. You just know that space. And when you come out of it, you're so amazed, or you feel refreshed and you feel renewed from having been there. And so the metaphor that I want to paint here is we have a really beautiful gardens around us, and this garden is meticulously cared for. I mean, the flowers are meticulously cared for. This is a garden that has fountains. People can go and watch light shows. It's really beautiful. People pay money. They have memberships there, and they host all kinds of events there. And it's just really, really beautiful sculpted gardens. And while it's really beautiful and I love it there and I will always keep going there, there's something really beautiful about walking into a woods that isn't necessarily meticulously designed. It didn't have a lot of hands in the pots, so to say. This forest, this untouched natural forest, has such beauty to it, even if it isn't meticulously cared for. There are beautiful trees and bushes and wildlife in there, and when you step into it, you feel the beauty of that untouched woods or that untouched forest, and you breathe in the fresh air and you feel this renewal and this renewal of spirit when you're in there, and you feel connected to nature, which is a very, very, very important part of being happy and being in touch with your true self. And when I think of indie authors, I think of indie authors as that forest because there aren't a lot of hands in the pot. There aren't a lot of people meticulously designing that garden. There aren't people saying, we'll take this character out, put this character in. I want to market to this demographic. We are seeing these trends. Let's go here. An indie fiction author specifically is that forest. It's this beautiful, untouched area that when you go into the forest, you feel such beauty and you can appreciate it for what it is. So one of the things that I do now is I read a lot of indie authors. I read it from the artist perspective because indie authors are artists. Fiction authors are artists. But if you take someone and take their manuscript and you chop it up into a million pieces and then deliver it back to somebody and say, this is what we're going to market, the art is not the same as if somebody writes something from that higher consciousness space and it's channeled through them or whatever it is. They tap into that place of creativity. If someone were to paint a beautiful painting, okay, And let's take Van Gogh. He paints Starry Night. If someone were to come to him and say, hey, you know what? That's great, but we'd really like it if it was sunny day instead. Not that it loses its value, but the actual creation process is changed. And I think that's why a lot of indie authors stay indie, because they want to preserve the art. And when I read a book, I read it from that artistic perspective, because what I've realized is that when you read a book from an artistic perspective, if you look at that person as an artist and then read that book from that perspective, as opposed to reading it from a book reviewer or an editor's perspective, you will see the beauty in the design. You will see the beauty of that author's vision, because you're experiencing it as if you were going into a gallery and looking at a painting. And we all have our likes and dislikes, and that's okay. And there are rules to follow, but people don't give themselves credit that they are artists. And I think that's something that we should celebrate. So, looking at things from a different perspective is sort of what got me onto looking at my life and saying, am I living from the space that I want to live from, or is there a better way to live? Is there a better version of me? Is there another perspective that I can take and look at life from a different perspective of how I can change my life, instead of complaining about this or saying this isn't working out? And what I realized, and I'm very thankful to have a lot of teachers in my life who have been, very helpful in painting this picture, is that just little tiny changes can shift something. So, for instance, for me, it's meditation at nighttime. Now, I get in these bouts of doing meditation, and I've always noticed, I do the Dr. Joe Dispenza meditations. I find them very helpful. I'm a student of Dr. Joe, and I have been for several years, so I find them to be very helpful. But I go through these bouts of, I'm meditating, I'm being very, very diligent about my meditations, and I'm getting into that space that is quite healing. And then I might do that for 3 weeks. And I noticed that the 3-week mark for me is really a powerful mark. First of all, the 3-day mark for me is very, very important as well. At the 3-day mark, I realized that my body has just calmed down just a little bit. Up until that, those 3 days, I don't feel anything. It's just a lot of my body not cooperating, my mind not cooperating, and we're going in that circle. After the 3 days, my body starts to cooperate. And then by day 21, let's say, I start to notice that my anxiety is usually gone. And I have suffered with this ever since the traumatic loss of my mother. So that was 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago. So, the anxiety has been pretty crippling at times, and meditation has gotten me through. So right now I am on day 4 of a new journey, and I've noticed, once you go back to it, I took a little while off because I just had a lot of things going on in my life, and I wasn't able to sustain that mindset and sustain that practice. Now I'm back to it. Small change, meaningful, and significant, even though it's small. The second is trying to fill my head with things that make me feel more connected to my higher self and to my inner self. Things like watching YouTube videos that make me feel connected, that help me to shift my life in small ways. And hopefully something like this might inspire you, especially with your writing. Watching things that help you to feel less like the burdens of your life are less heavy because there is a solution, and it's a positive one that makes you feel uplifted and happy and joyful and connected. If it's something where at the end of the video you feel like, actually, I can apply that and it will make a difference, all of those tiny changes are what is going to get you to the next point. So that's another thing that you can do. Sometimes you aren't going to have time for creativity because life does get hectic. As I said, I have a pretty hectic life, so I understand. There are children, there are other jobs, there are, just everyday things that come up and that keep us from focusing on our goals and finishing them. And then there's the bigger issue of sometimes we just feel stuck. And that stuckness is our calling to start looking around and saying, how can I connect with my inner self and get to that point where I'm not stuck anymore? So that's what I'm going to leave you with today. If you do end up downloading The Heir of Light and Shadows, please let me know. I love to connect with my readers. And please give me a like and a comment on this video, and I will chat with you soon.